Good afternoon, everyone. We're here to have a press conference to discuss some of the events that happened today. Speaking today will be District Attorney Sue Opper, Chief Dan Thompson of the Waukesha Police Department, also David Sorensen, which is the husband of Virginia Ginny Sorensen, Tyler Pudliner, he's a Waukesha South band member, and Amber Conkey, a mother of one of the juvenile victims. Also present with us today is County Executive Paul Farrell, the prosecution team consisting of Leslie Basie, Zach Witchow, Detective Tom Casey from the Waukesha Police Department, Detective Ryan Rugland from the Waukesha Sheriff's Office, and paralegal Christy Giese. Also to my right, your left, is Jen Dunn and Carrie Peterson from the Waukesha County District Attorney Victim Witness, and with our comfort dog Pepper, who have played an integral role with our crime victims throughout this whole process. To that, Sue Opper.
Thank you. First and foremost, our thoughts and concerns remain with the victims involved in this tragedy and their families. Although the defendant devastated our community, the people of the city of Waukesha, Waukesha County, and beyond demonstrated tremendous resiliency. We are so grateful for the first responders, citizens, and medical professionals who sprang into action and immediately rendered aid and saved so many lives that day. We appreciate the jury for their work and dedication to justice. We commend the police officers and citizen witnesses who testified or were prepared to testify and asked to relive the events of that horrific day. We are satisfied that this defendant has been held accountable for his actions. He now faces imprisonment of 6 consecutive life sentences plus 859 years of confinement. There is much healing ahead for the victims and for our community, but we hope today's result is a step further along that path. Remain strong, Waukesha. Thank you.
Waukesha Police Chief Dan Thompson.
Thank you. 2 days we'll never forget. November 21 of 2021, on that tragic day, and October 26th of 2022. Why October 26th? Because justice was served today. I want to say thank you and praises to this community. I want to say thank you in the resiliency and strength of the families and victims who were involved in it and were impacted by this event. The investigation team, I want to send a personal thank you to the District Attorney's Office, Sue Opper, Leslie, Zach, and everyone on that team who assisted in this successful prosecution. I want to say thank you to the jury and the court process and the court proceedings and everyone that was involved in the court who found this defendant guilty, which is just and right. That defendant's actions did not define this great community. It refined us in our resolve and our strength in being Waukesha strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. David.
I got it. Thank you. I'm David Sorensen. These are my 2 sons. Justice was served for my wife, Virginia Sorensen, my 3 children, and the whole Sorensen clan. Thank you very much to the people that did this court case. We appreciate it. Sean or Marshall wants to say one little thing.
We've been praying for this day for a long time, and this morning my 5-year-old daughter came up to me and handed me this necklace with my mom's ashes in it, and she told me to take my mom with us for the sentencing. So she was with us today, and I just want to thank everyone for what they did today. And one last thing, my mom always used to tell us when we were kids and our family that she always said, angels watch over you guys. So I just want to say angels watch over you guys and turn on those blue lights tonight.
Thank you.
I want to first thank the prosecution team. They were the one that got us to this point. I'm thankful for all their support along the way and getting us to this day. It's been a difficult day. I know that this will give us healing. This is another step forward in this process. We've been resilient all the way through. One of the things that I've said so much throughout this is that we're stronger than him, and it's been proven today. It's just another step forward in the process. So I want to thank Sue, Zach, Leslie, all those guys for their hard work, Jen and her staff, and especially those first responders. It's just been brought up. They are the ones that especially kept me here, gave us a second chance, and they've kept our community strong. So, yeah, Waukesha strong. As Marshall said, he touched on it. Keep those blue lights on tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Amber.
Just want to say that I'm very happy with the verdicts and that, you know, justice has been served today. I would just like to thank everybody, the first responders, the DA and the judge, all the law enforcement, everybody who was involved, especially those who were very much involved with my family and the support system that we have had. It's been amazing to see how wonderful this community has been to pull together for all of those who were hurt that night.
Thank you. With that, we'll take a few questions. Those available for questions will be Chief Thompson and District Attorney Sue Opper. So I'll start right here, TMJ4. Who would you like to direct your question to? Sue, come on up.
Okay, thank you.
Chief.
We just gotta know, how are you and your team feeling right now about this happening?
Well, it's obviously quite satisfying that Mr. Brooks has been found guilty and held accountable for his actions. As many of these victims have said, this is a joyous day for that reason. It's also the point where we hope everyone can move on from. The support that we've gotten as this case wore on day after day was tremendous, and we're very relieved. I guess that's the best word, is relief.
Hillary?
I saw you get a tear in your eye when they were talking about Virginia's ashes. You spoke about
Yep.
what this meant to you and the victims. How do you begin to describe what it was like going up against Brooks as defending him, representing himself? Did that change your strategy? How did you get through all that?
Yeah. I mean, legally, it changed our strategy, certainly, because if there's an appeal, we have to do, he can make a mistake in the courtroom and get a new trial, and we have to pay the price for that, we the state and we the victims. So it changed our strategy in that we had to make sure, and Judge Darrell did as well, the record was very thorough, very complete, and we didn't miss anything. But as far as handling the actual court proceedings, we felt very, very offended by his behavior, his disrespect of the court, the decorum, the families, his insulting the judge, his challenging the judge. That's not the way our system is designed. That was intentional on his part. We truly believe that. He did everything he can except claim that the dog ate his homework. And he tried to turn this into his story. Let's talk about Mr. Brooks and his family. And we just kept redirecting it back to the real focus here is our families, our victims, our community, and his responsibility for this destruction.
58.
What was the most challenging part, and how did you keep your patience through all of it?
Again, it wasn't a difficult case factually, and I don't mean to sound, overly confident in that, but this case was unique because the activity was videotaped, right? And so, whereas most cases we have to rely on eyewitness accounts or other ways to prove the case, we had videograph evidence of his behavior all up and down that crime scene and throughout the neighborhood. So that way, it wasn't difficult. Again, the difficulty and the challenges we faced was what nonsense was going to come out of his mouth next, and we were anticipating much of what would come next and being ready legally with case law and legal authority to be able to respond to that. So I think that was the hardest thing. The investigation was so thorough, so well done, that we knew the facts were solid. It was just making sure the record and the presentation was done legally accurate.
We'll do Fox Local.
Sue, what went into your decision to perhaps minimize the number of direct witnesses that went up on that stand? And I wonder, did you expect any of these antics, and if that went into your decision?
Yes, it did. So obviously, we didn't know until very late that he'd be representing himself. But we, as a team, set out from day one, and this was months and months ago when he still had attorneys. We vowed we would not put children on the stand. Absolutely. It wasn't necessary. Again, there were plenty of other ways to tell this story without asking a child to testify in a courtroom and relive this very, very extreme, tragic situation. So that was a commitment we made as a team months ago, and we stuck by that. Certainly, as we learned his antics, we reevaluated, and we would discuss it every night as a team: is who are we going to use tomorrow, and do we really need this person? Because we were so, again, not personally offended, but professionally offended that he would insult the process and insult the victims, accuse them of financial gain for their testimony, things like that. It was just so offensive that we definitely were conscious of that in our decision-making, and how can we minimize this for the best of everyone, but still provide a compelling story. So yes, it did definitely play a factor.
Court TV.
Thank you so much. Ms. Opper, there were so many victims' families inside the courtroom every day, sitting behind you. How much did that motivate you and your team, and how you presented your evidence and your closing argument? You mentioned them. And have you been able to speak to any of them that aren't here that maybe said something to you afterwards?
Yes. The motivation we received from those families was tremendous. And we knew, again, from the point when Mr. Brooks chose to represent himself, this was going to be a marathon. We talked about that many times as a team, that we just need to keep moving forward every day, whatever that looked like. But what motivated us was these families that are behind me, a lot of them. And we thought of those mothers and fathers sitting in hospital rooms with their children, and the ongoing care that they're still physically healing from and certainly emotionally healing from. And that motivated us tremendously. But you couldn't meet a nicer group of people. I mean, that's the thing, is I'm not surprised, having lived in Waukesha for 35 years, that they're good people here. And they would ask us, how are you doing? Do you guys need anything? Which was really phenomenal. They were a tremendous group of people to work for, and it was our honor to represent them and be a voice for them in the court.
Go ahead.
Andrew Granick, Spectrum News. Yesterday, it seemed you threw Darrell Brooks a little bit of a lifeline when it came to presenting his closing argument. It seemed that the judge was going to kind of forfeit his right to do that. What made you go that route to allow him and then just object to what he was saying?
That was strategic for the appeal, to be very blunt. I wasn't throwing a lifeline to Mr. Brooks. I really had no interest in hearing what he had to say, because I heard all of his lies and stories so far. So that was just trying to do what was legally required at the moment. And I frankly wasn't sure it was going to work, because he was so difficult with Judge Darrell. But in the end, it did work. He got to blurt out what he wanted to blurt, and then the judge struck that from the record, and we were able to move on. So I was glad that that was the result, but we talked about it at the prosecution table and came up with that idea of, let's offer this, again, just to protect the record for the appeal.
Jim.
Knowing what you knew going into this with Brooks representing himself, what caught you by surprise when he presented?
Again, his absolute disrespect and dishonor to the victims, the community, and the court process.
I'll do Brian from the Freeman, and then two more we'll do CBS, and then, where are you from?
WBR.
Okay, those were the last three, so go Brian, you got one?
Yeah, there's been some discussion since the verdict was announced that perhaps the decision to represent himself is grounds for appeal. Are you concerned at all about that?
Well, Mr. Brooks has a right to an appeal. Every defendant does. And I fully expect him to take advantage of his rights as a convicted defendant in this case. I am very confident in the record that Judge Darrell made and his decision to represent himself. Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Roxanne with CBS News. What do you think about the length of time that the jury took to deliberate? Short, long, were you surprised?
We were not. We talked about it last night, and frankly, I know a lot of you were here too. We were all, by the time we got to that 8 o'clock mark, we were exhausted. And when they said they wanted to go home and rest, we were thankful, quite frankly, because we all felt the same way. It's such an emotionally draining day. And to get through all that and the nonstop banter from Mr. Brooks, it's taxing. You all witnessed it yourself. So we were grateful. We thought they gave it good thought because they went out around 6:30. Their dinner was there immediately, right? So jurors are human beings. They get a nice meal. They got a little time to talk, and then they decided, let's rest. Let's sleep on it. Always a good option for decision-making for anybody, right? Get a good night's sleep on it, and come back the next day. And then, they worked again for about another hour this morning, and with the quality of the investigation in this case, we think the verdict was fair. The timing was spot on.
WR, go ahead.
There's a lot of people who are here today, of course, but a lot of people who are also at the parade on the day of the parade who aren't here. In closing, what do you want to say to them just at the end of this process?
Well, I hope some of you caught the flavor of that. You cannot imagine until you saw some of those videos how horrific it would have been to stand there and watch that. Especially when your children, and some of these witnesses testified to that, they couldn't find their children, right? And that's not just people who were struck. That there was many, many citizens who could not find their own child for a period of time. So just unbelievable. But once the car went through and everybody had that initial, the way the citizens of this community punched in. There's no other word for it. The nurses, the doctors, the EMTs, the paramedics, anybody who knew anything about how to apply a Band-Aid walked into that street and treated those people. So that was another source of strength for us, right? Is if they could do that, we can get through this.